We live in a world that's constantly testing our patience. How many Karens have crossed your path? The driver who cuts you off, the co-worker who talks over you, the stranger online who insults you for no reason. Every day, someone, something, tries to pull us into their storm, and most of the time, we go willingly. Anger has become the default language of our age. Outrage sells, noise dominates. We scroll, react, explode, and we don't even realize we've lost control. But have you ever stopped and asked yourself, why? Why do we let small things have such power over us? Why does one careless word, one rude look, one small setback ruin our peace for hours, sometimes days? We tell ourselves, I'm not angry, I'm just tired. But beneath that tiredness lies fire, a silent frustration that eats away at our calm. The truth is, we're not tired of life. We're tired of reacting to it. There's a fire inside every human being. It can warm, or it can burn. When we're children, that fire feels pure. It's passion, curiosity, energy. But as we grow, the world begins to test it. And if we're not careful, that same fire turns to anger, resentment, and bitterness. We start to think anger gives us strength, that yelling means control, that revenge means justice, that cold silence means power. But anger doesn't make us powerful. It makes us prisoners. Every time you lose your temper, you hand your peace to someone else. Every time you explode, you prove that others can still control you. And deep down, we all know we weren't meant to live like that. There's a quiet part of you, a part you may have forgotten, that longs for calm, not numbness, not indifference, but the kind of strength that nothing and no one can disturb. That's what this journey is about. Because there is a way to live in a world full of noise and never let it shake you again. It's not fantasy, it's not denial, it's mastery. The ancients had a word for it, apatheia, not apathy, but equanimity, the art of inner balance, the ability to remain calm not because the world is easy, but because you are unshakable. I used to think calm people were simply born that way, that they had better lives, easier circumstances. But the truth is, the calm ones you meet, the ones who seem untouchable, they're not lucky. They're trained. They've learned a skill that the rest of us have forgotten, how to control the only thing we ever truly own, our mind. And this is where Stoicism enters the picture, not as a cold philosophy of detachment, but as a discipline of freedom. The Stoics believed that peace doesn't come from changing the world, it comes from changing our relationship with it. They said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. That line, written almost 2,000 years ago, could be describing our world today. A world where everyone reacts before they think, where calmness is seen as weakness, and outrage is celebrated as authenticity. But imagine this, you walk through chaos and nothing moves you. You're insulted and you don't even flinch. You lose something, and instead of breaking, you breathe. That's not weakness, that's mastery, that's freedom, because anger, no matter how righteous it feels in the moment, always burns the one who carries it. Anger is strange. It arrives faster than thought, louder than reason, and often disappears, leaving only silence and regret. We like to think it's strength, that it's power, that when we raise our voice, we're standing up for ourselves. But anger isn't power. It's pain wearing armor. It's our body's alarm system, built to protect us from threat. Thousands of years ago, that response kept us alive. But now, most of the things we get angry about are not tigers in the jungle. They're emails, words, opinions, or people who simply don't act the way we want. When anger takes over, logic disappears. Your brain floods with adrenaline, your heart races, and your body prepares for war against a person who might not even know they hurt you. And when the storm passes, what's left? A mind that feels tired, a spirit that feels heavy. As Seneca once said, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Every outburst, every argument, every emotional reaction, it costs energy. And when you spend enough time fighting everything around you, there's nothing left to fight for yourself. We think anger makes us real, but often it only shows how easily we can be moved. The truth is, anger is never the first emotion. It's the bodyguard of something deeper: fear, disappointment, rejection, loss of control. You're not angry because someone disrespected you. You're angry because, in that moment, you felt unseen. You're not angry at the person who hurt you. You're angry that you allowed it to happen. It's easier to shout than to feel. Easier to clench your fists than to admit your heart hurts. But every time you let anger speak for you, you silence the truth inside you. And that's the real tragedy, because anger is not who you are. It's who you become when you forget yourself. Buddha once said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned." So what do we do? How do we live in a world full of noise, ignorance, and injustice without becoming part of it? It starts with understanding this. You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Once you recognize anger for what it is, an old alarm in a modern world, you can start to disarm it. And that's the first real step toward freedom. Because when you understand your emotions, you no longer fear them. And when you no longer fear them, they can no longer control you. That is the nature of anger and the beginning of mastery. We spend most of our lives trying to control the world around us. We plan, we predict, we prepare. We make lists, schedules, and expectations, all in the name of security. But deep down we know the world doesn't care about our plans. How many times has life surprised you in ways you never saw coming? The job that vanished overnight, the person who changed without warning, the storm that ruined everything you built. And every time it happens, a familiar voice rises in the back of your mind, and a voice that says, "This isn't how it was supposed to go." That's the seed of anger, that quiet rebellion against reality. It's not the event that hurts us. It's our insistence that it should have been different. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Those words sound simple, even obvious, but they contain one of the hardest lessons a human can learn. Because we don't just want things to go our way, we need them to. Control gives us the illusion of safety, and when that illusion breaks, the mind scrambles to rebuild it. That's why anger feels so strong. It's our desperate attempt to wrestle back control when the world reminds us how powerless we really are. It's the ego's final stand, the child within us screaming, "Listen to me, do what I say." But the world doesn't listen. It never did. Control is a seductive idea. It whispers promises of order, predictability, peace. "If I can just get everything right," it says, "then I'll finally relax." But peace built on control is fragile. It shatters the moment life moves in an unexpected direction, and life always does. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. They divided the world into two realms: what is up to us and what is not. Up to us, our thoughts, our actions, our choices. Not up to us, everything else. It's a simple line, but one that takes a lifetime to understand. Because while we say we understand it, our emotions reveal the truth. We still want to control the uncontrollable. We can't stop the rain, yet we curse the weather. We can't change people, yet we fight to make them see things our way. We can't rewrite the past, yet we replay it endlessly in our minds, as if somehow this time it might turn out differently. Epictetus warned of this centuries ago. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. But stopping worry isn't about ignoring life. It's about understanding your limits. When you stop fighting the tides, you realize you were never drowning. You were just resisting the current. We live in an age of control. We control the temperature in our homes, the speed of our cars, the visibility of our lives online. We can curate our image, filter our flaws, schedule our emotions, and yet anxiety has never been higher. The more control we try to build, the more fragile we become, because deep down, we know all it takes is one small thing to undo it all. When control is your source of peace, uncertainty becomes your greatest enemy. But when acceptance becomes your peace, nothing can threaten it. Anger is born from the refusal to accept what is. It's the mind's way of protesting the truth. When we cling to the illusion that things should be different, that people should behave better, that the world should be fairer, we hand our power to chaos. But the moment you say, "It is what it is, and I will meet it with calm," you take that power back. Acceptance doesn't mean weakness. It means alignment. It means standing in reality, fully awake without denial or resistance. You stop trying to control the waves, and instead you learn how to breathe underwater. Think about the last time you were angry. What were you trying to control? Was it another person's opinion, an outcome that slipped through your fingers, a situation that refused to obey your plan? If you trace the root of every frustration, every irritation, every rage, you'll always find the same thing: a refusal to accept that life has its own rhythm. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They were simply realists who understood the futility of fighting what already is. They trained their minds to respond instead of react, to act from choice, not chaos. They believed the only true control we have lies in our inner world, our perceptions, our judgments, and our actions. Everything else is weather. There's an old Zen saying, "Let go or be dragged." And that's the choice, isn't it? To let go or to be dragged by every event, every word, every disappointment. But letting go isn't passive. It's not surrendering to apathy. It's surrendering to reality. It's saying, I can't control everything, but I can control how I show up. And that's where peace lives. When I began practicing this, I realized something strange. The less I tried to control, the more control I actually had. Because calmness is control. Patience is control. Clarity is calm. Every time you're angry at someone, stop for a second and ask yourself, what exactly are you reacting to? The words, the tone, the disrespect? Or is it something deeper, something that lives inside you? The truth is, what bothers us most in others often reveals what's unresolved in ourselves. That's the mirror principle. When someone is arrogant and it makes your blood boil, ask why. Maybe you once had to suppress your own confidence to fit in. When someone disrespects you, maybe it's not the insult that hurts, but the reminder that you never set boundaries before. We like to think anger points outward, but it always points inward first. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever you are offended at someone's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. It's not self-blame. It's self-awareness." The Stoics didn't teach us to hate others. They taught us to see ourselves through them. Every person you meet is a mirror. The rude driver, the selfish co-worker, the distant friend, they're all showing you something about yourself. Something you still need to master, or something you've long ignored. And the more you fight the reflection, the stronger it gets. Because what you resist persists. If you avoid what triggers you, you never grow. But if you pause and look closer, anger becomes a teacher. Every trigger is an invitation. Every irritation, a lesson. When someone mocks you and you want to react, ask, what am I protecting right now? My ego or my peace? Most times, it's the ego. The part of you that craves validation, control, respect from others. It's loud. It wants to win every battle. But your higher self doesn't care about being right. It cares about being free. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Adversity doesn't just test your strength, it reveals your identity. The people who annoy you, hurt you, or test your patience are not obstacles. They are opportunities to practice who you claim to be. If you say you're calm, the world will send chaos to see if it's true. If you say you've forgiven, life will send someone who wrongs you again to test whether you meant it. That's how the mirror works. The world reflects back the state of your inner peace. The calmer you are inside, the less chaos you attract. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop feeding it with reaction. You start to understand that other people's behavior is never about you. It's a reflection of their own fears, conditioning, and pain. So why take it personally? Why hand your peace to someone who hasn't even found their own? Every time you react with anger, you reinforce the illusion that others have power over you. But when you choose silence instead of shouting, understanding instead of judgment, you break the pattern. That silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because silence is the sound of control. Silence is the sound of mastery. It's the moment you step out of the mirror and stop fighting shadows. Anger may still visit you, but it won't own you. You'll start seeing people differently, not as enemies, but as teachers. The liar teaches you integrity. The arrogant teach you humility. The impatient teach you calm. The cruel teach you compassion. In the end, every encounter is sacred. Every trigger is a lesson disguised as discomfort. And when you realize that, anger becomes irrelevant. Because the more you understand yourself, the less anyone can disturb you. That is the mirror principle. The understanding that the world isn't happening to you. It's happening for you, to show you what still needs healing, what still needs peace, and what still needs love. And once you begin to see that clearly, you stop fighting mirrors. You start polishing them. When we stop fighting the world and start facing ourselves, something powerful begins to happen. Emotions stop being enemies and start becoming teachers. Most people try to control or suppress their emotions, as if peace means never feeling anything. But peace isn't numbness, it's mastery. It's knowing how to feel deeply without being consumed by what you feel. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew emotions were not the problem. Attachment to them was. Anger, fear, envy, pride. These weren't sins to be erased. They were energies to be transformed. The Stoics were the first emotional alchemists. They learned to turn chaos into clarity, pain into purpose, and fear into focus. We all have that power, but it starts with awareness, noticing the emotion before it takes over. Because emotions are like storms. You can't stop them from forming, but you can decide whether to stand in the rain or seek shelter in your own calm. When anger rises, most people let it lead. They speak before thinking, act before breathing, and then spend days cleaning up the mess made in a single moment of blindness. But when you pause, when you simply breathe, you reclaim your power. That breath is the doorway between reaction and response. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." He wasn't telling us to ignore emotions. He was telling us to slow down long enough to see them clearly. Every feeling, when examined with honesty, loses its power to control you. Imagine your emotions like fire. In an undisciplined mind, that fire burns everything. Relationships, peace, clarity. But in a disciplined mind, that same fire gives warmth, energy, direction. Fire isn't the problem, lack of control is. That's why the Stoics didn't run from emotions. They studied them. They sat with discomfort instead of distracting themselves. They turned inward instead of outward. They wanted to understand the architecture of emotion, where it comes from, what triggers it, and what it reveals about us. Because anger always points to an unmet expectation. Fear always points to an imagined future. Envy always points to comparison, and sadness always points to something we haven't accepted yet. When you start noticing these patterns, emotions stop being random. They become maps. Every emotional reaction is a clue leading you back to yourself. If you trace it long enough, it always ends in one of two places: fear or attachment. You're angry because something threatens what you value. You're anxious because you're attached to an outcome you can't control. You're jealous because you fear not being enough. And in every case, the emotion is just the messenger, not the enemy. The mistake most people make is trying to silence the messenger. They distract themselves, scroll endlessly, binge entertainment, seek validation, anything to avoid the discomfort. But avoidance doesn't heal. It hides. The Stoics believed the only way to master emotion was to face it fully, not to indulge in it, but to understand it. They treated the mind like a fortress. When anger knocked, they didn't open the gates and invite it in. They stood at the walls and asked, Why have you come? And if the emotion had no answer, they let it pass. That's emotional alchemy, transforming reaction into reflection, turning the raw energy of emotion into insight. The key to this transformation lies in perception, because no event is good or bad by itself, only our judgment makes it so. That's not denial, it's perspective. The Stoics practiced reframing, the art of seeing things differently. When something painful happened, they would ask, "What if this isn't happening to me, but for me?" That single shift changes everything. Instead of anger, you feel curiosity. Instead of fear, you feel presence. Instead of despair, you feel responsibility. Because the truth is, nothing outside of you can hurt you without your consent. Think about it. Insults only wound if you agree with them. Rejection only stings if you make it mean you're unworthy. Failure only breaks you if you believe you were supposed to succeed. The mind gives meaning to everything, and in that meaning lies your freedom or your prison. When you realize you are the one assigning value, the illusion breaks. You stop saying, "They made me angry," and start saying, "I allowed anger to arise." That's not guilt, that's power. Because once you own your emotions, you can change them. The Stoics trained this daily. They visualized worst-case scenarios, not to live in fear, but to prepare the mind for life's unpredictability. They called it premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. By imagining loss, insult, failure, they built inner resilience. They understood that what you rehearse in your mind no longer shocks you in reality. When the storm came, they had already stood in the rain in their thoughts. This practice turns anxiety into readiness. It's not pessimism, it's psychological armor. There comes a moment, after all the storms and lessons, when you realize peace was never something you had to chase. It was something you had to remember. We spend our lives trying to control everything around us. People, plans, outcomes, only to discover that the more we tighten our grip, the less peace we feel. But when you release control, when you trust yourself to stay calm in the face of chaos, that's when real strength begins. Unbreakable calm isn't about being emotionless. It's about being untouchable, not because nothing happens to you, but because nothing owns you. The Stoics called this state apatheia, but that word never meant apathy. It meant clarity, a mind undisturbed by noise. Imagine a flame that doesn't flicker in the wind, a river that keeps flowing no matter what falls into it. That's what the Stoics trained for. Not the absence of challenge, but the presence of mastery. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you live by that, you stop reacting to the world and start directing it. The rude comment, the delay, the disappointment, they all become tests, small invitations to practice composure. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you build the muscle of peace. Every breath you take between stimulus and response becomes a victory. But calm is not built in comfort, it's forged in conflict. You'll never learn patience by reading about it. You learn it when life gives you reasons to lose it. You'll never master forgiveness by agreeing with everyone. You master it when someone wrongs you and you stay grounded. The world is your training ground, and every obstacle is your teacher. The Stoics knew that. They welcomed hardship because it revealed who they really were. Unbreakable calm comes when you stop wishing for an easier world and start cultivating a stronger mind. It comes when you no longer need things to go your way in order to stay centered. You realize that happiness built on circumstance will crumble the moment circumstance changes, but peace built on perspective, that lasts. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." The moment you stop craving for people to act a certain way, for life to unfold exactly as you planned, you free yourself. You step outside the prison of expectation and into the freedom of acceptance. Because what breaks most people is not reality, it's resistance to it. The Stoic path teaches you to see reality, embrace it, and act with wisdom, not resentment. And in that acceptance, there's immense power. Because once you accept life as it is, you can move through it without friction. You can act without desperation. You can love without fear of loss. You can serve without needing recognition. That's the essence of calm, stillness in motion. To cultivate that, you must train your awareness daily. Notice when emotion starts to rise. Feel the heat of anger, the pulse of anxiety, the wave of frustration, and instead of drowning, watch it. Observe your mind as if you were standing outside it. You'll see that emotions always have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They come and go like weather, and you are the sky that holds them. The Stoics believed that no external force could disturb your peace without your permission. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." If someone insults you, it's not their words that hurt, it's your interpretation. You can't control the storm, but you can always control the sail. In a world built on noise, silence becomes rebellion. In a world obsessed with reaction, calm becomes power. The calmer you are, the more clearly you see. The more clearly you see, the wiser your actions become. Calm isn't passive, it's strategic. It allows you to choose your timing, your tone, your direction. It's how you win battles without fighting. The mind trained in calm becomes a sanctuary. It's not that chaos stops knocking, it's that you no longer answer. You start to understand that most people are simply projecting their own chaos outward, hoping someone else will carry it. But you don't have to accept what's not yours. Let them keep their storm. You stay the mountain. True mastery is measured not by how much you control others, but by how little they control you. You can stand in the middle of insult, loss, and uncertainty, and still breathe evenly. That's when you know you've crossed the threshold from ordinary peace to unbreakable calm. You no longer need validation, because your worth no longer depends on the world's approval. You no longer crave revenge, because you see that every reaction steals from your serenity. You no longer fear the future, because you've learned that the only moment that ever matters is the one you're living now. When you reach that point, life becomes simple again. The noise fades. Decisions become clearer. Relationships become lighter. You stop running after things and start walking with purpose. That's the paradox. When you stop chasing control, you finally gain it. Every insult becomes irrelevant. Every loss becomes instruction. Every setback becomes strength. Because you start to understand, the goal was never to avoid difficulty. The goal was to become the kind of person who remains unshaken no matter what happens. Unbreakable calm is not inherited. It's practiced day after day. It's built in the moments when you want to lash out but don't, when you want to quit but stay, when you want to complain but choose gratitude instead. Each small act of restraint polishes your mind, like a blade forged in quiet fire. That's how you become immovable. Not because the world grows gentler, but because you grow wiser. You start to embody the Stoic truth. That peace is not a place you go to, but a power you carry with you. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, or life doesn't go your way, remember this: the test isn't out there. The test is inside. Will you let the moment own you, or will you stay still and own yourself? That's the question every Stoic asks and answers every single day. If you master that, you master life. Because once you can stay calm when everything else falls apart, there's nothing left to fear. This is the path, the Stoic path, the way to unbreakable calm. This is a very powerful message. You should watch this video many times, at least once a day, so it really sinks in. If this message spoke to you, you're gonna like this video here. The Stoic Way. The story of how I lived these principles for 30 days, and what it truly means to find peace in a chaotic world. This video will give you a blueprint to how apply these concepts and life strategies. Because in the end, peace is not found in silence. It's found in mastery, and mastery begins within.